Lewis.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the introduction, and I appreciate you all attending this afternoon with the new I-9 going into effect in approximately a month. This is a great time to be discussing it and be ready for it when it does go into existence. So, the first most important really question is, when is it required to be used? And it's January 22nd, 2017. So that is, now we'll talk about that it can be used before then, but it must be used at that point. You cannot, any prior I-9 forms, the prior 2013 one, cannot be used at that point on January 22nd, 2013. Are there significant changes in this one, what I'll refer to as the 2017 I-9 form? Yes. Are they as major as when the I-9 form went from 1 page to 2 pages back in 2013? I would say no, but they are significant. The 2013 was a major change because they had been 1 page since beginning existence in 1986. So just that in and of itself was a fairly major step, and then also what other things that occurred when they made that change. So what is the most significant change in the 2017 I-9 form? Of course, that's subject to debate, but I would say, in my opinion, it's the addition of what they refer to as the SMART I-9 form as one of the 3 ways to complete the I-9 form. So exactly what is the SMART I-9 form? Well, you can probably take a guess from the name, SMART, that it is supposed to be smart. It can assist you in the filling out of the I-9 form in ways that if you just did it on paper, there was no real way of getting the assistance besides reading the instructions or maybe calling your legal counsel. But the SMART form is a downloadable I-9 form using an Adobe Reader. It is not an electronic I-9 form. I don't know how many of y'all have already switched over to some vendor who uses electronic I-9 form. If you have, then you really don't need to be worried about the SMART I-9 form. But there's a lot of companies, probably way more than a majority, that continue to use the paper I-9 form, and this is a variation of the paper I-9 form. So what you do is you download it, and so when it's on the screen, as opposed to printing it out, if you want to print it out, then it's not going to be the SMART I-9 form, it's just going to be the I-9 form as you've always used it. But if you start filling it out on the screen as a downloadable form, then it has enhanced error checking abilities. And these abilities will help you in preventing you from making a lot of mistakes. I'm sure, all of y'all who are attending this today have dealt with the I-9 for a good long while. Know that when it was a 1-page form, it was commonly referred to as one of the most complicated 1-page forms there was in existence. Now, if it's 2 pages, I think you could make some of the same arguments that it's one of the most complicated 2-page forms in existence. Now, especially for folks in HR, there's just so many ways that you could make errors. And if you're an employer who doesn't hire a lot of people all the time, so you're not filling out a new I-9 form as the employer in Section 2 on a regular, daily, or every other day basis, then it can get confusing. So how does this smart form make you smarter, so to speak? Well, it gives you alerts that you didn't fill in all the data. Say, and here's one of the most common mistakes that I see, and it is so critical, but it happens all the time, because I represent employers in ICE audits, and I do internal I-9 audits, and so I look at a lot of I-9 forms. And one of the things that drives me crazy and will drive you crazy once you see the fine that will be assessed by ICE is there is no box checked as to what that worker's status is. They didn't check that they were a U.S. citizen. They didn't check that they were a permanent resident. They didn't check that they were a U.S. national, which almost no one is. They didn't check that they were authorized to work for a certain period of time. Say none of those boxes were checked. Well, that in and of itself, when audited by ICE, is a substantive violation, meaning that you will be fined for failure to have one of those boxes filled out. Or I've also seen where people check off two boxes, that they're both a permanent resident and authorized to work, which is somewhat true. You, as a permanent resident, you are authorized to work, but they are separate boxes. Authorized to work means in this situation, you have an employment authorization card or some document to that effect. You don't have a green card or a permanent resident card. So the smart form is a great way to realize, oh, the employee didn't fill out something in Section 1. Now, even if you do a paper form or you do it on an electronic basis as the HR employee, you should be reviewing everything that the employee fills out in Section 1, because you, as the employer, are going to be held responsible for any errors in Section 1, even though you don't fill out Section 1. The employee does, but Immigration and Customs Enforcement is never going to fine or give a penalty to the employee. That fine or penalty is going to go to the employer. So you continue to have that responsibility whether you use the smart form, a paper form, or electronic I-9. On all three, you have that responsibility. But it will help you with the situation. Now, after you have completed the smart I-9 form, you need to print it out. At that point, you print it out, and you obtain the signature, and then you monitor for any re-verifications or updates. Now, as you might know, if you do the electronic I-9, then you would be doing with electronic signature. You're not doing that on a smart I-9. You're still using a actual printed ink signature onto the I-9 form, and then you fill out Section 2. Well, Section 2 should be filled out when you're doing it on the smart I-9, and then the employee signs for Section 1 and the employer signs for Section 2. Now, don't think, well, I use a smart I-9 form, therefore ICE can't get me. I've got immunity. That's not true. It should curtail errors on the I-9 form, but if you still make an error, whether it's on the paper form or the smart I-9 form or the electronic I-9 form, ICE is still going to assess you a penalty. And so you can't just say, well, I did the smart form. The smart form should have caught the error. If they didn't catch the error, it was their fault. Well, ICE ain't going to buy that argument. So you need to continue to be vigilant in looking for errors. As mentioned earlier, so there's now 3 paper smart electronic.